Welcome back to the PAC Sports Network for our halftime show. We're at the intermission between Allegheny and St. Vincent, and we now have the pleasure of being joined by the head coach for Allegheny men's basketball, Coach Pat Sullivan. Coach, first off, thanks so much for joining us today. Want to dive right into the early part of the season and kind of the first portion of the year as well. What have been some of the early season takeaways through this portion of the year that you've had for your team?
Yeah, we're young, so there's been a lot of learning along the way, and we've played a pretty difficult non-conference schedule. I think we're learning how to compete at a higher level maybe than we had in the past. In the way we scheduled the non-conference, you kind of have to compete to have a chance against some of the people we've played. So we're learning how to compete. We've got 5 new guys are in our top 8. So there's a lot of teaching and things that have to go on with that, and things that you somewhat assume guys know they don't know because they're young and they're new, and so there's a lot of those things that pop up throughout the first couple months of the season. So we're learning, we're growing. The young guys are getting better. The older guys are shifting into some new roles from last year. Obviously losing Luke Barker to graduation. He was a huge part of what we did. And so even my older guys are taking on significantly different roles than they had to take on last year. So it's been a lot of learning for me, a lot of, trying to tweak things and figure out what the best combinations are and the best guys to, where to play them and things like that. So a lot of new in the first however many months we've been doing this.
Well, I think the newness kind of came in full force against Carnegie Mellon, a very good team in Division III, taking them down on the road too. How much confidence did a win like that give your group, not only in that moment, but also showing them, hey, this is what we're capable of when we're playing at our best?
Well, I think it was a really good cap to our week that we had that week. That Saturday we played Case Western at home, and it was a 3-point game with, I think, 8 minutes to go, somewhere close to that 8-minute media. We were right there, and we just, kind of ran out of gas, and they're good. They were big and physical. I think they kind of wore us down. And then, we flipped around on Tuesday and played Muskegum, who's really good. And we had the lead with under 8 minutes to go in that one and couldn't finish that one off. So I think being able to go down to Carnegie Mellon, to play well, to have a lead, I think we were up 15 at one point early in the second half, and then to be able to kind of hold on and finish that one off, put a really good capper on the week for us, as far as us getting better and kind of growing and learning and trying to figure out how to win. So it was really important for our psyche. It would have been tough to have lost those 3 that week having competed, but we were able to figure out a way to do it, and had some guys have some really good individual performances, and gave us a lot of confidence as we headed into break.
Well, you mentioned the newness as well again with the team and with the personnel, and I think one that you've really benefited from has been Pius Latauskis, and he's someone that has taken the league by storm. What has impressed you the most about his first season in college basketball?
Well, he's a really mature player. He's not rattled easily. He's really competitive. He really understands how to play. He loves to be coached. Those are all things that you never really know until you get a guy. Like, how's he going to handle being coached and being asked to do different things? And, is he going to love it? And he does love it. He's super into it. He loves watching film, loves being in the gym and working out. So that's been awesome. He's taken on, kind of more and more responsibility as the season's gone on. Obviously when we recruited him, I would never have guessed that he was going to be our leading scorer as we turned the page into January, but it didn't take long once practice started to figure out that this guy, he was going to have a chance to have a great year for us, because he can do a lot of different things, and he's not afraid to try new things when we ask him, hey, we need you to try to do this, or we need to try to do that. So he's accepted the challenge of being our leading scorer, which has been exciting.
And for you, with all of this change, I'm sure having some consistency and a little bit of experience in Ryan Lang returning has probably steadied the ship some. And he seemed to take on a little bit more of, like you mentioned, a different role, more of a facilitator role at times. What have you liked about his embracing of that new role, kind of stepping aside as a scorer and having to be someone that runs the offense sometimes?
Yeah, he's done a really good job with it. And it's a completely different role really than he filled last year. Last year he was kind of the point guard, but it was a lot of, enter the ball to Luke and then try to score when Luke passes it to you. And this year, he's really had to learn to read the game. I think early in the season, it was a lot of, hey, he's out there trying to score because that's kind of what he's been doing. And then, with him being our best returning player, like that got a lot of people's attention early, and he's had to learn how to find the open guy. And, when you play with a guy like PJ, it makes facilitating a little bit easier because he can finish the play, but he's done a really good job kind of accepting the role of, hey, I've got to kind of read the game from game to game and figure out what they're giving me. That's something that he and I talk about a lot is early in the game, like we're going to have an idea of how we think they're going to play, but like they may come out and do something different than what we've prepared for. And like, you got to be able to read the game and you got to be able to play with pace. He's done a much better job as we've gotten into the season of playing with good pace off the ball screens and not being in a hurry and really slowing down and trying to read what they're giving us. And I've really appreciated him embracing that role because sometimes when, you enter into that role, it can be hard because you're seeing a lot of different things. And, sometimes when they hit you with something you're not ready for, it can cause you to be really frustrated. And he isn't that way at all. He's always asking me and trying to figure out, hey, how can I be better at this? How can I help us lead? How can I help the team be better? And he's really embraced kind of taking on that role of having to kind of try to lead the group and navigate having, 4 freshmen and a transfer being in our top 8. And, those guys going through this for, pretty much the first time, some of those guys. So he's done a great job of kind of shouldering the responsibility and, trying to lead the young guys, the new guys to some wins.
It seems that he's almost the 1A to Jason Perry's 1B in terms of floor generals, where Jason has done also a fantastic job setting up the offense when needed. In a way, how does Jason kind of complement Ryan, but then in a way also able to stand out on his own and be kind of his individual player when you're playing up against and going up and playing alongside a really good guard in Ryan?
Well, I think those two guys, because they've been together now for a while, they've gotten pretty good at figuring out which one of them is having the better day. And when Ryan's going, like JP, like he's really good at just kind of, letting Ryan do his thing. And Ryan's really good when JP's kind of got it going of like, hey, no, like we need to make sure JP's got the ball a lot so we can try to make some plays that way. So those two guys, they play off of each other really well. And they have a really good sense for when one of the two of them is really going, they kind of defer to that one. And so that's been helpful. I mean, there were a few games early. I mean, I can think back to the Westminster game at home where Ryan kind of deferred to JP in a stretch when JP was really going. And then Ryan made some big shots late. And, like JP kind of knew, hey, we got to get Ryan some touches here because he's got it going a little bit. So, it's been great seeing those two guys be able to play together and kind of, at times asking the other one, hey, hey, go score. Like, it's your time. Because it doesn't always work that way, but they're both very unselfish, and that makes the partnership even better.
Well, certainly will be a fun finish to the season for you and the Gators, Coach. As always, before we let you run, and we really appreciate your time today, want to hear from you what you think will be the piece or kind of the key for this team and really the calling card to help guide your team to a DPAC run and push for a title.
Yeah, I mean, it for us, a lot of it starts with, how do we rebound? It's an area where we've struggled at times on the glass. And, we've been able to still win some games when we've gotten out rebounded significantly. I mean, the Carnegie Mellon being a good example of it, but it's really hard to sustain success when you're giving up a lot of offensive rebounds. And, until we really shore that up, we're going to have some trouble because when you defensive rebound, one, you can play in transition, which means you're going to get better shots. But 2, when your opponent's offensive rebounded, the second shot's always higher percentage than the first shot. We do a really good job guarding the first shot. I mean, you can look at a lot of our games, even games where we've lost, or maybe it seems like we haven't played well. We've been able to get people to miss the first shot quite a bit. And we've struggled on the defensive glass, and some of that is youth and, guys needing another year in the weight room. And some of it is just, making it more important and being more urgent in our ability to go to the glass, especially from the perimeter. So it's a constant thing that we work on every day in practice is trying to be better on the glass. And, really for us, if we can figure out how to start winning the rebounding battle on a more consistent basis, we'll have a chance to be a good team. If we don't rebound consistently, we're going to be up and down and we're going to be inconsistent. And a lot of it, the two things I talk to our guys a lot about is, hey, we got to try to be the most physical team and we got to have the most urgency. Because that's what rebounding is. It's about being physical and it's about having urgency to go get the ball. And when we have those two things, we can play with anybody. And we've showed that at times. And when we don't have those two things, we can lose to anybody too. So we got to find that more consistently on Wednesdays and Saturdays from here on out.
Well, Coach, really excited to see how the rest of the season plays out for you in Allegheny. As always, really appreciate your time today and good luck the rest of the season.
Thanks, Jack. Appreciate it.
That's Allegheny head men's basketball coach Pat Sullivan. Stick with us. We have the second half of today's game coming up next on the PAC Sports Network.